What's up guys, this is Paul with Paperlike, and this is the brand new iPad Air 4th generation. I'm really excited about this iPad Air because I am a heavy iPad Pro user. I have mine set up right here with some notes for this video, and I use it every day in class to take notes. It's my main note-taking device. And this new iPad Air basically has the same design and form factor with that edge-to-edge display. It's actually 0.1 inches smaller, but that shouldn't make too big of a difference. But it comes in at just $599. So now I'm wondering if this might become my go-to recommendation for students looking for an iPad to use for school. So if you look at the box, you can see that I actually got this new pastel blue color. I think it looks pretty cool, but we'll have to wait and see what it looks like in person. We'll go ahead and peel the plastic wrap off. And one thing you'll notice is that it says 64 gigabytes on the back. Now, this is different than the iPad Pro, which now starts at 256 gigabytes. So that's one of the reasons that it's $200 cheaper than the Pro. Go ahead and open the box, and the first thing we see should be the iPad. Of course, you get your manuals and stickers in here, a USB-C wall adapter, and a USB-C charging cable. Now we just have the thin plastic left on the tablet, so we'll go ahead and peel that off nice and slow. And wow, my first impressions of this blue is that it's a very pale blue. It's almost like silvery. I think it's not too oversaturated, and if you're gonna be using this every day, I think a more muted color is more appropriate. So I really like that. Now, when it's turned off from the front, you really can't tell much of a difference at all between the Air and the Pro. But if you take a quick look around the device, you will notice a few differences. So for example, there's only one camera on the Air, whereas the iPad Pro has both a wide-angle camera and an ultra-wide camera. The iPad Pro also has a flash built into the camera, as well as that LiDAR scanner. It's a little hard to tell right now, but you might notice that there's less sensors up here by the cameras, and that's because the iPad Air no longer uses Face Unlock like the iPad Pro. Now it's using Touch ID with the home button here. And I actually didn't know this until I had it in hand, but the iPad Air's home button is a lot bigger here. So it's about maybe 50% larger than the iPad Pro's home button. And that's probably just to accommodate the Touch ID technology into the button. But we'll go ahead and turn on the iPad Air and get it set up and running so we can run some benchmarks. And already going through the setup process here, I noticed one of the biggest differences between the Air and the Pro, and that's the lack of the 120 Hz ProMotion display. So like most smartphones and laptops out there, the iPad Air just has a 60 Hz display. So if you haven't used a 120 Hz display before, you wouldn't notice the difference, but coming from the Pro, that is pretty noticeable. We're gonna go ahead and set up Touch ID. Now, I'm a little bit interested to see how this works here. I don't know if it's the most natural spot to put Touch ID, so I'm interested to see in everyday use if this becomes a problem or not. So we finally got through the setup process, and now I'm interested to see if you can actually tell the size difference between the Pro and the Air. And so as you can see, the bezels are just ever so slightly thicker on the Air, probably not gonna make a huge difference in everyday use. And you probably can't see this over the video, but sitting here in person, I definitely can tell a pretty big difference between the smoothness of these two displays. So we'll go ahead and use Touch ID to unlock. And there you go, just as I expected, it's super quick. I'll probably get used to that pretty easily. Now, one thing I am very interested to see is how these two benchmark in comparison to one another. So we'll go ahead and download Geekbench on the iPad Air and run some simultaneous tests to see how they compare. And just because I can, I might as well throw the iPad 8th generation into the mix to see how the entire iPad lineup stacks up to each other. We'll start it on the Pro and the Air at the same time, and then go ahead and start it on the 8th generation. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that the iPad Pro has the A12Z Bionic chip, while the iPad Air has the new A14 chip. The Pro also uses 6 gigabytes of RAM while the Air only has 4 gigabytes. There we go, the iPad Air actually finished first. And there we go, so the iPad Pro finished with a slightly lower single core score and a slightly higher multi-core score. And the iPad 8th generation just finished up shortly behind the other two. Now, of course, these are just benchmarks, and in everyday use, if you're just browsing the web or watching media on your iPad, you probably won't notice a difference between any of these three. But if you do more intensive tasks like 4K editing or working with 3D modeling software, then the Pro and the Air probably offer you a lot more power over the 8th generation iPad. But between the Pro and the Air, they're probably almost identical in terms of their performance. One last thing I wanted to show you all is that since the iPad Air has a smart connector on the back, just like the iPad Pro, it will also work with all of the accessories that work with the iPad Pro. So that means if I take my Magic Keyboard over here and put my iPad Air into it, it snaps into place perfectly and it's automatically up and running. So there you go, that's my unboxing of the brand new iPad Air. I have a lot more testing to do, but my first impressions are very positive. It seems very similar to the iPad Pro. And coming in at just $600, this is a very competitive tablet price point. So over the next couple weeks, I'm gonna be testing this out, taking notes in all my classes and using it for schoolwork, and just putting it through an average day of use to see how it holds up in comparison to the two other iPads. So if you're interested in seeing that, make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.